Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. And today we are going to look at the resource IXL. They have offered an extended 90-day free trial during COVID. So we're going to go through that and look at some of the features. IXL offers extra practice and reinforcement for skills in the areas of math, language arts, science, and social studies, and even some foreign language as well. And it has activities created for kindergarten through 12th grade. This is a great website to assign extra practice either to a whole class or to specific students, and reinforcement. It doesn't do the teaching for you, but it's great practice and reinforcement. So I'm going to go ahead and just navigate now to IXL. Now, if you haven't started your 90-day trial, this is the screen that you'll see, and you'll simply fill in your information and you can start your trial. I have started my trial already, so I'm just going to go ahead and sign in. Okay, so here is my sign-in page, and I'll be completely honest, I have never used IXL in the classroom. I've heard of IXL, I know I have teacher friends that use it, I know of districts that use it, and have great things to say, but I've only learned it in the past 35 minutes or so. So in the past 35 minutes, I've started my trial, I have added students to my roster, I have assigned activities, I completed those activities as if I were a student just to get an understanding of it, and then I've looked at the data that it's given me. And that's taken about 35 minutes. So it's pretty easy to use and quick to get started. And so I think it's a great resource for e-learning. Now, IXL has tons of features and a lot of things it can offer. And I'm not going to go through all of them, first because I don't know all of them. Like I said, I just learned this myself, but also because I think for our purposes of e-learning, we want to keep it simple. And so what I learned to do this afternoon would be great and would be enough if I were going to use this in my e-learning classroom. So if you are someone who has used IXL or in a district that uses IXL, you probably know way more than me and could make a way better video. But for us novices, I'm just going to go over the basics to get you started. So right here, when you're on your welcome screen, this is where I started. And I went to roster. And when I went to roster, I was able to enter some of my students. So I just made up some students here. And they have you enter like their last initial, their first name, and then the parent email address or student email address, and a password for them. And then it generates the username. If you don't give them a password, it will generate a password for them. And then what you'd have to do is you have to give parents this login information. And they actually have this downloadable, editable version right here that you could fill in for each of your students and send. That gives directions for how parents log in and then their individual login names and passwords. So that is basically how I got started. Then, once I had my students in place, then I went over to the Learning tab. Okay. And up here are the subject areas that I am doing my free trial in. And so I wanted to look at math today just because I've done a lot of reading resources already, so I wanted to touch on math. And under here, this is where they organize the different topics and skills that students can do. So you can see it's organized by grade level. And when it's organized by grade level, you see a high number of skills. I found that page overwhelming, so I went to the topics page. And again, the topics page had a high number of skills too. So that overwhelmed me. So what I liked, especially for e-learning, I went to the skill plan page. And the skill plan page allowed me to choose the Indiana Math State Standards. And I found this a much easier way to organize it. So I'm going to pretend that my students are in second grade and they are in math. And we need to assign some math skills. So you can go on here and you'll see that you have the Indiana State Standards. and then all the skills listed under each standard. So I went through and I've clicked on these stars on the skills I want my students to practice. I want them to practice some skip counting activities. I also have assigned some number line activities. Now, if we go up here to the skip counting activities, you'll see that I've assigned them to all of my students because I want all of my students to practice these activities. But if I go down to the number line activities that I clicked, you'll see that only Mark is assigned this skill. And that's because I know Mark needs some extra practice on this. So this is a very easy way that I can individualize instruction. Now, I can also do this for other skill areas as well. I wanted to highlight math today, but I could also use the same strategy for language arts. I would go to my skill plan for language arts. I could choose my second grade Indiana State Standards. And then I could go through and highlight the activities that I want. So I have found some already. I wanted to do synonyms, so all of my students are going to do synonyms. And then I have some extra activities down here for Mark as well. I want him to work on prefixes. Okay, so far I've added students to my roster. I've emailed my parents their username and passwords, and I've chosen the activities that I want my students to do. So now I'm ready for my students to actually do their work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually sign in as a student so that you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to sign out of my account, and I'm going to log in as one of my students. Again, this is the username and password that you would be sending to parents in that letter. So I'm going to sign in as Evie. And this is what Evie would see when she signed in. And this right here is where students would know what they needed to work on. So you can see Evie currently has 13 skills assigned to her. She would click on that, and then she would see a list of the skills that she still has to complete. So let's say she's already done the make halves activity because you can see the score here. She has 100 here, but she hasn't done the make thirds activity. So she can do make thirds, and it would bring her to this activity. What I really like about IXL is that it reads the directions aloud. So if you click these little icons here, it will read the directions and it will tell students what they need to do. So students would follow the directions. They have to connect the dots here to divide the paper into thirds, click submit, and then it gives them their feedback. So that is basically how the activities are set up. What I'm going to do now is I am going to sign back out. And now I want to sign in as the teacher again because my students have completed some activities and I want to see what they've assigned and what data I can glean from what they've assigned. So now I can go back into the Learning tab here on my dashboard, and you can see I have these tabs right here: students, skills, scores, all of these things. And so right now I'm going to look at my students tab, and I'm going to go to students quick view. And this gives me an idea of overall what my students have done. And then I can see underneath my individual students. So what we just did, make thirds with Evie, she did one question and she's been on here for less than a minute, okay? It also shows that she completed the make halves activity and she got 22 out of 29 right and it took her 2 minutes. And then I can go down here for Mark and see what he has done. So it shows the activity for all of my students. Then I can go even farther and I can break it down into my student details. So it has Evie selected right now and it shows what she has done on IXL and the scores that she has received. So again, this is a very, very basic overview. IXL has so much more to offer. And if it's something that you like, I encourage you to look at all these tabs and what it can show you as far as data for your students. But this information that I just gave you is really enough to help you start learning in your e-learning classroom. When you go back to your home page on your learning page, there's this section here called Teacher Resources. And this has a lot of useful tools. So it tells you how to get started. There are some webinars and videos you can watch if you want to learn some of the other tools and features. I would recommend going to this section here on Teacher Resources. So thank you so much for watching this video on IXL. Remember, IXL is currently offering the 90-day extended trial for COVID, and it's good for kindergarten through 12th grade. And this is good for extra practice and reinforcement of skills that students need. If you have any questions once you get started with IXL, like I said, I am not an expert, but I would be more than happy to help you figure it out so that you can use this for e-learning. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.